It is Greg J. Stoker, a man of parts, a man with a considerable following and growing by the day. He's an activist, a veteran, and he's the host of Colonial Outcast podcast, which is definitely a wonderful name, and also State of Play on Mint Press News. Anyone associated with Mint Press is always welcome here on the mother of all talk shows, but Greg Stoker is particularly so. Greg, thanks for joining us. Your observations, firstly, on how the BRICS summit has played out. You happy, disappointed, somewhere in between?
Oh, first of all, I've mostly been spending the bulk of my bandwidth tracking the ongoing offensive in southern Lebanon and northern Gaza, but it's nothing we didn't expect. And I think, an alternative to the SWIFT banking system and the IMF and some of these institutions that are implements of the West to subjugate, the global South and, kind of the rest of us through imperial feedback and the imperial boomerang could use a bit of a challenge.
Yes, well, it got quite a stiff challenge today, and I think tomorrow you'll be pleased. You should use some bandwidth on tomorrow's press conference because there are going to be some zingers delivered there by Putin. Let's turn then to the thing that is preoccupying you and millions of us around the globe. And if I am called to ask a question tomorrow, it will almost certainly be about that. The murderous onslaught on Gaza, which has turned into an almost biblical scenes of people flooding at the point of guns and with the danger of bombardment at any second out of their own land in complete defiance of international law, which precludes the forced movement of people in occupied territory. So it's a flagrant war crime that is being committed in front of our eyes. But then there have been 500 of those already in the last 12 months. And then the entirely illegal attack on Lebanon. These may be local wars for now, although extremely bloody ones, horrifically bloody ones, but they may soon, within the next hours, explode into an all-out regional war. What do you think?
Well, first of all, it's very clear that the dimensions of this conflict are expanding and can expand exponentially in the coming days. First of all, we have to conceptualize three different operational theaters. First, the action in Gaza, the ongoing genocide, Operation Summer Camps in West Bank, which is basically just a massive bulldozing effort to destroy civilian infrastructure. And now this war over the buffer zone in southern Lebanon. So currently how that stands, it seems like they've only been able to penetrate about 3 kilometers at various points into southern Lebanon. They haven't taken any significant towns. They've been doing the same mass demolitions that we've been seeing in Gaza. It seems like they've taken a significant amount of casualties, more so than they did from Hamas in the resistance forces in the north, which are still active and functioning. And it just seems that it kind of reminds me at during the surge in Afghanistan, just no operational objectives, no timeline, nothing definable. It seems now that a ceasefire is further away than ever. I know Amos Hochstein, the special envoy to Lebanon, former IDF soldier, was just passing along the conditions for a ceasefire with Hezbollah, which is the same playbook that Israel and the Israeli Foreign Ministry has taken with Hamas, and that is to offer a non-starter of a deal as a propaganda piece. So the deal right now is they will agree to the ceasefire, they being Israel, will agree to a ceasefire with Hezbollah if they're able to maintain control of this established buffer zones to continue ground operations in southern Lebanon to further demilitarize Hezbollah and have Lebanon's airspace still open for jets and drone and ISR assets. So it's not a ceasefire that is acceptable, that any reasonable person would accept. It's not in good faith, and this will continue without any definable objectives or timeline.
No definable objectives in the Lebanon, but you're beginning to see, are we not, the shape of a definable objective in Gaza, namely the complete, absolute ethnic cleansing of the north of Gaza, the total destruction of the Jabalia refugee camp and other camps in the north, the extirpation by one means or another, either leave or die, of hundreds of thousands of people there who've been multiply displaced ever since 1948. They're only there because they were refugees then and remain displaced people. Does that seem to you to be the game plan of Israel? In which case, can we trust them not to do the same in the south eventually?
Well, first of all, you could argue that they're already starting to do the same thing that they did. When I first started talking about this mid-October, about what their actual plan was with Gaza, I saw all these pundits on CNN, these former paid for regular military contributors in mainstream media absolutely lying, comparing what their action was to the conduct of NATO forces or coalition forces during the unfortunately named global war on terror. So they're supposed to be fighting a counterinsurgency, right? I mean, they're not. They're actually effectuating ethnic cleansing and genocide. But there was this acronym that we used in American counterinsurgency operations. It was SWEAT MSO, which was sewage, water, electricity, academics, trash, medical, safety, and other. And if you basically, the premise was, if you're an occupying force and you are trying to secure a population and root out an insurgency, you would need to protect all of these sectors, because if you're in occupation and you don't have an education system, you don't have sewage, electricity, plumbing, all the amenities of modern life, turns out people are going to want to kill you. So it's a way to mitigate the amount of people that would want to attack you in a counterinsurgency situation. So they've been destroying the sewage, water, electricity, academics, trash, medical, and safety, and other since the beginning. Since, I think, October 13th of last year is when they started targeting power grids, water, and everything else. And so what they did, if you look at the timeline of their actions, it wasn't until November that they started, after they got away with targeting less controversial strikes, they started with Al-Shifa Hospital. And they said that there was tunnels underneath. They released a CGI of, Hamas fighters walking through rooms that weren't even connected to each other, and it turned out to not exist. Now, 2 days ago, they released, the IDF official propaganda page released a schematic, completely fabricated schematic of a bunker system and like a treasure vault of gold, like it's some sort of Spanish galleon from the Age of Sail, where Nasrallah had his secret like dragon's hoard of war money. So but unfortunately, Israel can't keep international journalists out of that hospital. So the BBC went through it. A bunch of other independent journalists went through it. The actual medical staff moved the entire like trauma ward patients into other locations because they thought it was going to get struck. So they are definitely trying to effectuate the same kind of violence and strike the same kind of targets that in Lebanon that they are striking in Gaza. And now it's expanded to Tyre, to a lot of historic towns and villages in the south. And one of the main targeting methodologies that they have is to target all of Hezbollah and all of Hamas, which are embedded into the civic life of Beirut and Gaza. There's a militant wing, but there are like lawyers, media people, administrators, bureaucrats, generator repairmen are technically affiliated with Hezbollah. So, and they are non-combatants. So they are just dropping everyone in Beirut that they think is even associated with it. And the overwhelming majority of the ordnance that is being sent in kinetic strikes is against civilians and civilian populations, and they have no collateral damage methodology or estimate for what they're doing. They simply do not care. So I don't think that they're going their entire strategy, their information operations is a game of brinksmanship, building up a propaganda narrative, seeing if they can get away with it. And once they get away with it, because of the political cover given to them by the West, they will do it and now make it a matter of state policy. First, they got away with hospitals. Then they got away with mosques. Then they got away with bulldozing grave sites. The same thing we condemned the Islamic State for in Syria. So, they're trying to normalize it. Everything they got away with in Gaza, they have to re-normalize it again in southern Lebanon. And that's exactly what they're trying to do.
Now, you're a veteran, Greg, yourself. There are many reports from the Israeli media and from the mouths of Israeli soldiers themselves that they are really up against it in the Lebanese theater in particular, that they come home from these conflicts to which they've been sent so traumatized. Many of them are opting for suicide and the rest. There's some report of poor morale, turning against officers, not fragging them yet, but condemning them on camera, condemning their own officers by name on camera. What kind of state do you think the so-called IDF currently is?
Aside from a core group of professional soldiers, the overwhelming majority of the Israeli army are conscripts. You spend 2 years learning a job, and compared to professional militaries like the UK, the United States, after 2 years, what are you still? You're still a private. That's not enough time to learn how to do your job. So basically, most of these people they do their military service and they get a tech job in Tel Aviv and they think they're going to have a nice life. And now they're having to go back into Gaza for the 5th time. Hamas has changed their strategy to a lower intensity conflict, which is actually kind of psychologically damaging, more so than other operations, because what do you get? Sniper attacks, sniper operations, IEDs, booby traps, and they're having to go back into houses that they've cleared, and now they're booby trapped again. They weren't expecting this. I think they went in having it being told that this was going to last 9 to 12 months. That was what the Hebrew media was saying, because they compared it to the coalition forces and the Iraqi army clearing Mosul of the Islamic State. And that's how long it took. So that's what everybody was expecting. And now it's not ending. They know it's not ending. And they weren't prepared for this. Now, when it comes to the morale issues, the suicides, which they have a media blackout on, the Israeli military is not reporting on actual suicides. I wouldn't if I were them. It's probably a lot higher than anybody wants to admit. I mean, we still have America from the global war on terror. We still have 22 a day. I would expect those figures to be a little bit higher, because despite things like the Haditha massacre and Abu Ghraib, it wasn't as institutionalized, these atrocities, as it was with the IDF. So yesterday, or was it about 48 hours ago, CNN came out with this sympathy piece. It was like, he escaped from Gaza, but Gaza didn't leave him. The suicide and mental health issues. And it was this puff piece describing how, these soldiers who were driving these bulldozers and literally squashing hundreds of Palestinians, both dead and alive, were killing themselves. And it just kind of reminds me of stories from World War II, why war crimes had to be institutionalized because of the effect it had on morale. So they are running around with their command saying, essentially, you can do whatever you want, but they're still human. Like, they're still affected by committing these crimes. And yes, I think the 150,000 American veterans who've killed themselves in the past 20 years, I think you're going to see higher statistics, especially like in a year, 2 years, when these guys get back after they've done what they've done and they try to hold down a job, can't do it. try to be in a relationship, can't do it, massive drinking problems. It's bad now, but it's only going to get worse. The massive military and cultural ramifications from keeping this violence, this genocidal violence going on, it's unprecedented, and it's going to be incredibly self-destructive, both socially and culturally, especially within the military ranks.
Will November 5th mean any change to the situation in Gaza, in Lebanon? Will a Trump victory or a Harris victory, in your view, mean any change at all?
I don't see why there would be any substantive change. Trump is out there saying, we need to help Benjamin Netanyahu get the job done, get it done faster. Then you have Harris saying, I will never put any conditions on Israel. So even though Trump says we're going to help them do it faster, it's like there's not really a mechanism. We're already giving them the weapons. Like, what's the next step? Putting boots on the ground? That would have massive political and domestic blowback if because the American people have really, in general, no taste to get stuck in another West Asian forever war. But no, there's going to be no policy shift towards Israel. If Trump's elected, there will be a policy shift towards the war in Ukraine, most likely. But that's beyond the scope of this. When it comes to Israel, absolutely not. I think Harris is really jeopardizing her election chances by not paying attention to Muslim American voters and voters on the left who have a very base demand to just not do genocide. And there are detractors amongst the Democratic Party. There are Democratic operatives on social media saying genocide, like, look at all these single issue voters, like, look at Trump. But people are done after a year of watching this. People are done being threatened by Trump. They've seen that Harris is just as pro cop, pro national security state, pro fracking, she's been walking back her vaunted protections of LGBTQ rights, and I think there's a lot of people have a lot of issues with Harris, but I think her unwillingness to budge and to denigrate people, American citizens, and we're supposed to be a representative government, and most Americans do support a ceasefire, just plowing full speed ahead. So regardless of a lot can still happen in 2 weeks, but no, there's going to be no policy change.
Greg Stoker of Mint Press News, thank you very much indeed for joining us for the first time on the mother of all talk shows.